In this video, I'm going to be going over some of my design tips for creating the best website that you possibly can that actually works and engages with users. Well, first off, let's talk about using consistent branding. Branding is using your logo, your colors, your fonts, just your general style. These are important elements to your website and who you are, and you want that to be consistent, not just on your website, but anywhere that you interact with people online, your social media, different things like that. And this will really go a long way in helping you to become recognizable and easily spotted online by your visitors and people that are consistently following you and engaging with you, and people who just see you for the first time. If they see you in passing again, your website or different things online or whatever, they'll know exactly who you are because you have a consistent branding pattern. Also, use good imagery in your website and your design, and also be sure to use copyright-free photos, or if you're using stock photography, purchase the stock photography. Don't just do a Google image search. That worked fine years ago, but that is not legal to use copyrighted images without paying for them or getting permission or giving attribute. There's a lot of different issues you can run into with that. Some cases you can, some cases you can't use it. So it's just best to make sure you're using copyright-free photos. And what's even better, especially if you're a business or a person who speaks or has a consistent blog or different things, it's really good to use your own images and your own pictures and have a photographer take pictures of you or use your photos or different things like that. And that really makes it connect with people because it really is who you are and what you do and what you are. And so if you can, use your own, but if not, at the very least, use copyright-free photos. And a great resource for this is, again, unsplash.com, and there are many others out there, but it has a lot of great images, different things that you can use, and they're 100% copyright-free. You don't have to give attribution. You don't have to, give them a link back. You can use those, and it's great imagery. And a good image, a good picture, can speak more than 1,000 words. You've heard it a million times, but it's true. And so definitely use good imagery in your sites. Also, readability, focus. You need to focus on readability. Text size, layout, colors, all kinds of different things factor into that. But look at your audience. If you're appealing to an audience that is older demographic, then their eyesight might not be as good as, say, a younger demographic, and they might be looking at a different screen, so maybe focus on making the text size a little larger and the font a little bit easier to read and different things like that. Or let's say that you're focusing on kids. Well, if you're focusing on kids, you again want it very clear. You don't necessarily want to have cursive handwriting in your text because they may or may not be able to easily read that if it's geared towards that. Something that's fun but yet easy to read. And also, just a side note with colors, you don't want to be too bold, but at the same time, you don't want to be too bland. And this goes for your different call outs and different things that you have. You want to have basically kind of 3 different colors in a typical scenario. Your 2 base colors, which are basically used throughout the site, and then maybe an accent color. So maybe you go between, like a dark charcoal gray and red, and you kind of use those colors throughout your site, your branding and stuff like that. And then for your text, you use, like a darker or lighter gray, stuff like that. And then you have an accent color that you can accent, links or banners or different things like that. And that's more of like color design, but especially with text, you have to be really careful. If your background color is white and you have a really, 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 really light gray for your font, a lot of screens may not be able to see it. You may be able to see it on your computer, but someone else on their computer may not be able to see it. Another thing to consider is how much content you have and kind of how it overlaps and different things like that, especially when it's on a mobile screen. Kind of look and say, okay, how does this fit on the screen? How much can people actually read it? Is it big enough? Is it small enough? Different things. If you have text that's absolutely humongous, well, on a smaller screen, it may not work out fine. But at the same time, if it's super, super small, on a small screen, you may not be able to read it at all. So finding the balance between that and having a focus on that and looking at the readability of it and testing it out really can make or break how well your website actually turns out. And again, mobile friendly is a very good way to start with your website. And again, this really starts with your theme. If you start with a theme that is out of the box, mobile friendly with responsive design, that's the best way to start. But the layout and the design and the things that you put in there, those are things to consider. One example is, sliders. Some sliders resize automatically and they're responsive design. But if you add a plugin that has a slider and it doesn't, then you go on your mobile site and the theme responds. It's responsive and it makes it look good on the site, but it scrunches the slider down so small that you can't even read it, and it distorts images and stuff like that. So one way to get around that is to disable the slider on mobile, and maybe you just have a solid image or different things like that. So before you sit down and build out your site, think about how mobile users are going to use this. And this is far more important than it used to be, but it really, really is crucial. It's not an afterthought now. You think about mobile friendly first, and that will definitely help your design later on down the road. We're like, well, it looks great on desktop, but it looks absolutely terrible on mobile. And especially if you're doing this for a client or you really are trying to be professional, that's kind of doing it as an afterthought is really not going to cut it. And it will save you a lot of headache and a lot of grief if you think about that first and then design the site around that. And again, look at your analytics and be able to tell, what your demographics are and see the kind of the percentages of mobile versus desktop. But at the same time, even if you have a low percentage right now of mobile visitors to your site, once you put out a new site or if you're starting a fresh site, more and more so in the future, mobile users are going to be steadily increasing. So keep that in mind. Even if you have primarily desktop traffic now, it's always good to go ahead and design it with mobile friendly design. And you can make it look beautiful on both. It's just a matter of figuring out a balance between the two. All right, moving along here. Think through your layout. If you think through your layout first, it will help your actual design process go a lot faster. And what I mean by layout is, okay, what am I going to put on the sidebars? What am I going to put in the footer widgets? What's going to be my main content in the middle? And you may even just get a piece of paper out and kind of sketch this out. And think about kind of the user flow. How do you want people to, when someone comes to your site, what do you want them to look at? Do you want them to look at the top, look at the menus, then look at the sidebar, and then at the content? Or do you want them to look at the content and then kind of go over to the sidebar and grab their attention with an advertisement or let's say other menu options where they can find other content or different things? Or do you want to scroll down to the bottom and you really want to display your social media icons and different things like that at the bottom and say connect with us? Or maybe it's an email subscription form that you really want people to fill out. So think about where everything's placed on the page and the layout and how everything's designed, and think through what you want people to be looking at, what's going to catch their attention first, second, third, and fourth. And so if you can kind of guide the conversation with their eyes and kind of as they scroll through there, kind of think through the layout to be able to attract people throughout the whole process. And that's what I was just talking about, is think about user flow. And a good tool for looking at this is in Google Analytics. There's a setting where you can go down and look at user flow, and it allows you to see, okay, people hit my home page and then they hit my about page and then they hit my services page. And actually I just went over this with a client not too long ago, and they were like, wow, we have 80% of our traffic going through the About Us page and reading the history of our company before they go to our services page. Well, we didn't even really put that much thought into the About Us page. We just kind of put it up there. So maybe since most of our traffic is flowing through there, let's go ahead and put some good content, some call outs, some call to actions, different things like that on that page, and really focus in on that section of the website so that instead of them reading that and dropping off, capture their attention and kind of facilitate a flow into what we really want them to look at, which is our services. And so really take a step back and look at the big picture and see how people are actually looking at your site, not how you think they might, but actually take a look into it. And that's especially true after you've had the site up for a while. Kind of revisit that every so often, and that's a really good thing to do. Another thing is tell a story. If you are building a website just to build one and just have content out there, that's fine. But really what people are looking for is a story. They want to see your business. They want to see your cause. They want to see your content, but they want to have a story behind it. They want to be presented with something that really grabs their attention. And so what's your story? Are you providing services for clients? Are you providing an end solution that is better than they've ever had before? Are you turning their outcomes from negative experiences to positive experiences? Well, there's a story in there somewhere. And so really focus on that. And you'll see this more and more with video and photography and imagery and different things like that. A lot of brands and companies and websites are really starting to focus on telling stories. Apple's a really good example of this with a lot of their videos for iPhone and iPads and just a lot of their devices, but they tell a story with it. They'll start with a little kid who opens up, their Christmas presents, and the dad's videoing it with his iPhone, and then he goes onto his Mac computer and he's, editing it with iMovie and different things like that. So throughout the whole process, they're telling you a story. The story is you're capturing the memories of your child's, childhood, and you're able to easily put those together, and they're telling a story behind that. They're not selling the product. Okay, this is a Mac with X amount of RAM, X amount of hard drive space, X amount of processor, blah 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 blah. They're not being so factual, because people will look that stuff up if they're really serious about getting it. But before they delve into the details, they want to know the story. What's the reason they should go with you? Why should they continue reading your site? Why should they buy your product? Why should they use your services? Why should they stay on this website? And so that's something really important, is kind of creating that story. And it may be a little difficult at first, but if you kind of break it up into chunks and say, okay, what do I want people to think when they walk away from this? Before they delve into all the technical details and what we do and how we do it and all that, what's the story? And if you can build your design around that, you'll have a much more effective and successful website. So, in conclusion here, I have kind of three different parts here. I like to put these into kind of three different boxes. The first is think. Before you start building your website, before you start putting everything together, before you even start drawing on paper, think about it. Think about why you're doing this, the purpose behind it, the goal, the outcome, the user flow, how you want people to interact and engage with this. What is your focus? Why are you doing this? And then once you kind of have that, sketch out some goals. Okay, this is what I want. Okay, this is our objectives. And it may not be what you think it is. You may say, well, I want more sales. Well, what you really want is you want people that come to your site, engage with you, and really connect with your story and the outcomes that you provide, and then go to your services and buy that and be a rock solid customer. That's what you want in most cases, and that's a much more powerful branding and long-term business plan as far as a business model. And so if you think through that and you put that into your website as far as goals and objectives, it'll be easier to kind of design around that versus just the pure functionality of, okay, we need to have a sales page. And so that's start first with thinking, and then imagine all the different angles and different ways to do this. Okay, what if we have the service page as a homepage instead? So when people come there, instead of having a homepage and then having to click the service page, what if we have a video at the top that explains who we are, what we do, tells our story, and then it bumps right down into our services? So, you've seen a lot of one-page designs and parallax and different things like that, where you can kind of just keep scrolling through and they kind of tell the story and mix it in there with their services, or click here, do this, call to action, stuff like that. So sit down and imagine the best way to reimagine, I guess is a better word, how to put the content into the website and kind of get the flow going and really work on that. And then once you've thought about it, you've imagined the ideal situation of how people would engage and interact with this, simplify as much as possible, make it as easy as possible, and then design. Start working through this and play around with the design and move this here, move that there, and kind of really start working things out. But your design process will be much easier and much more effective if you start with think and then imagine and then work on design. So there you go. That's my design tips, and I hope you find this useful in your design journey.